Everybody, welcome back to a new episode of Pact of Mics and Fire, where we're covering House of the Dragon, episode 5. For the very first time, Ryan, 2 weeks in a row. So I just want to, right out of the gate, say that we didn't miss a week this time. Very excited. And we're joined by special guest, Ben Sharon, host of, among other things, but most, currently the Have Not Room with me, where we cover Big Brother. So first, Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Brian. Hanging in there,
Yeah.
on the mend. Had to make it for two in a row, So
Yeah, no, of course, and we appreciate it. And Ben, how are you doing?
Doing good, yeah. Excited to not only talk about House of Dragon tonight, but yeah, as you mentioned, Big Brother 26 starting up tomorrow night, and
Yeah, we gotta figure
that
out
as well.
when we're gonna be covering it now, especially if threw a
Yes.
wrench into the plans of having the episode start at 9, going to 10. That's I get it, primetime show, but like, Big Brother, are you a 9 o'clock show? Like, be serious with yourself. Here, be honest. So we'll figure it out, but we'll be back with the Have Not Room. But yeah, let's get quick thoughts. Ryan, quick thoughts about your episode 5. How you feeling about it? It was a little bit of like a setting the pieces up after a pretty epic battle in episode 4.
I feel like every episode before this made some pretty major. Had some pretty major plot points. Right, this was definitely more of a setup episode. There were, I guess, there were some big moments, but not as much action, not as much like anything fatal or volatile, right? I thought overall it was a good episode. Kind of set up everything pretty well. We kind of saw that Allison has really lost her influence, and she just doesn't have any really connection with any of her children.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it seems that Allison you reap what you sow, right? The meme of like me sowing, this is awesome, then me reaping, what the hell, this sucks. That's where Allison is right now, especially in that zoom in. But Ben, what do you think of the episode? And then I guess you can pick where we start here, which storyline we start talking about first.
Sure. I actually think this is like less of like a setup episode. To me, this felt like a cool down episode, and really like exploring a lot of the consequences of what happened in the previous episode, where we see like obviously Alicent and eventually like Aemon gets put in position as like the king regent, but like them dealing with Aegon being like basically like 10% alive after the dragon fight, and then also you have on the other side in particular Corlys dealing with his wife's death in that whole storyline. So to me, this felt like we had this big explosion last week, and this is like the debris falling down after the explosion's over, before like the next explosion goes back up.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess do we want to start with Aemon getting a promotion, becoming king? Would this be? I guess it's protector of the realm, regent for his brother. I don't know the exact correct term here, but Aemon's in charge. His schemings and complete disregard for his brother's safety during the battle have really paid off for him. So I guess thoughts on the new protector of the realm, Ben?
Well, to me, this was like Alicent was like the centerpiece of the episode for me, and like kind of her, as you mentioned, her reaping what she sows. But I think like with that in mind, Alicent kind of has gone all in on a side that's basing a lot of their premise for their decision making intrinsically valuing Rhaenyra for being a woman. So I really don't really like. It's kind of like yeah, I'm a I'm a strong woman, but I'm not a feminist kind of vibe. Whereas like you kind of seeing the consequence of it's almost like Shiv Roy-esque, where she's seeing the consequence of aligning herself with a perspective of that, and then also kind of like having to internally deal with the fact that basically like she's been passed over from a control perspective. And even though, as she argues, she has all of the experience for having been essentially like the acting ruler for years as her husband was on his deathbed. She is still being passed over for her underage son, who is like other than being like a very strong fighter, is kind of also nearly as hot-headed as his brother, who just nearly was murdered. So
Yeah, no, it's it's unfortunate for her, but what can you do? Ryan, what like were you thinking as each of Allison's previous allies were just abandoning her for Aemond here? Sir Christian. Sir Christian seems like he has PTSD from
Yeah, exactly.
from that battle. I think he was ready for war, but not ready for that. But yeah, Laris and Sir Christian both abandoned her. What are your thoughts on that scene?
Well, I think she had to see this coming. Kind of like Ben aligning with themselves with this side too. It's kind of been some of the faults of her and Otto, where it's kind of like, yeah, you're backing it all on that these the Targaryen princes have the right to the throne, but then she's trying to realistically claim power over her son, who, if Aegon dies, for better or worse, he would be the next king, right? And she's just kind of losing her influence overall. With Laris, does it have to do with their transactions? I have no idea, but she even goes to Laris, and Laris, he doesn't even blink twice, just cold blooded. He's just like, the obvious choice is Aemon it has to be Aemon, right? He barely even looks at her. And then, like you said, Kristen is just broken at this point from last episode, right? He doesn't even really know how to talk to her afterwards. He's kind of like, well, he's even like, what do you want out of this? What are you going to get from being like Queen of the Ashes anyways? This is ugly. Like,
Yeah, and I think a lot of Rhaenyra's arc so far has been like, we can't involve the dragons. If we involve the dragons, the dragons will die, which is like a huge part of this episode of like the dragons being these godlike beings to normal people, and the Targaryens by proxy being closer to gods than normal people because they're able to bond and ride the dragons, and then parading the head of the dragon through the streets, and people kind of being like, oh, they're just like animals, like they're not this crazy unknown thing. They're just a big lizard that can be killed. But yeah, I guess, where was I going with this tangent? But no, I think Sir Christian backed up Rhaenyra's point in this episode, without having even talked to her, being like, now that we've crossed this line and it's gone here, there's no going back. And this is going to be a war unlike any war one we've seen in the main series, because Daenerys had dragons, but like, Robert didn't have dragons when he took the throne. That was just a conventional war. But this is going to be war unlike anything that the realm has ever seen. Even when, the conquering happened, it wasn't like they were fighting dragons. So like, this has just gotten completely out of hand, and it's going to get worse. It's going to be fun to watch, but it's going to be bad for the characters.
Yeah, there is no war as a war between dragons. Right?
Yep.
They keep saying it, but they keep forgetting.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. It's they're the nuclear bombs of their time. where it's like no one wants to use it, but once one person uses it, everybody's got to use it. So it should be interesting there. To go off the other thing that you mentioned, Ben, Corliss. Speaking of broken men, Corliss completely broken. He's lost his daughter, his son and heir. He's lost his grandson, who was also his heir. He's lost his wife now. I mean, Ryan, can you just give us a little status update on how Corliss is feeling?
Corliss, well, I mean, he his granddaughter just like denied him too pretty hard.
That too. His granddaughter's like, I'm a Targaryen.
Yeah, she's like, clearly, if you watch me, you've been fucking shit up. I'm a fucking dragon tamer. I'm not one of you weird little sailors. Like, it was kind of cold. It was kind of cold, you know. But yeah, I think he's just grown weary of all of this. I mean, his character, we know, especially in the first season, they very much projected he's grasping for a lot of power. Then he just kind of becomes overcome by grief, and he just kind of wants, you know, we know that he cares a lot about the history books, how his name goes down, but we kind of see him settling these past seasons. Maybe him getting his life saved was part of that. And, you know, now he feels conflicted becoming the Hand of the King. I'm not sure how much he necessarily how highly he guards Rhaenyra, and you know, especially probably I mean, he did align with Daemon prior to this, but you know, I don't know how invested he is at this point, but I think he sees that he really doesn't have any other choice. And you know, like we said, a big thing with him is his name, his legacy, the power he wields. I do think that he can get over. I think he could probably get over this pretty quick and start pushing one of his bastard sons to be a dragon rider, which, you know, that obviously at the end of the episode covered a little or foreshadowed a little bit. And yeah, I think it makes sense he ends up naming one of them heir.
Yeah, I think, you know, that'll be very interesting to watch unfold to get them back into the fold here. You know, I think, you know, like you said, he cares a lot about how he's going to be perceived through the history books, and his attempts to play the Game of Thrones have only like led to ruin for his house, and now he's all alone. But on the other hand, we see in this episode his blockade is really the best thing Rhaenyra's side has going for him, and I think we get, you know, very interesting scenes showing the people of King's Landing deal with that. I don't know, Ben, if you want to talk about those scenes and how you felt about the small folk really going through a bad time here because of
Yeah, I think this also is presumably kind of setting up where Rhaenyra is sending, or like Rhaenyra is having Mysaria send,
her handmaid, who
her handmaid,
remember her name.
Yeah, I can't remember her name either. I was trying to pull it off the top of my head, but I couldn't. But basically, like, you know, a representative to try to essentially stir up unrest within the walls of King's Landing, and it's like, I don't think they have to do that much, right? Like, Aemon's going to be doing it himself at this point.
Yeah.
I think
is her name.
What was that?
Alinda.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, I think like, do you think that Aegon even would have made this call? I don't, because like, I think one of the, like, Aegon, for all his faults, and like, he is a hothead, and he does like really make rash decisions when he's like dealing with anger or grief or whatever. He has been shown at the very least to have like a mild level of empathy for the small folk, or at least like understand some level strategically that the small folk rebelling is going to be bad, and would be him basically like fighting a war outside and inside the walls at the same time. And Aemon's like, oh, they're complaining about the blockade and how they can't get food and medicine. How about we lock them in and make it so that they can't leave, and like beat them up with our guards if they try to leave.
Yeah, what do you think of that
Smart
strategy?
from the
So I
Ryan
actually,
Ryan, yeah.
actually want to say, I know it sounds weird saying this. I actually don't think of it as rash because I think Eamon, like, I think he would have gave the same exact answer if given a ton of time to think. It's not so much rash as it is just like, he's very like, it's this way or the other, you know. It's right. It's kind of similar to what we see with Damon. All right, you steal something, I cut off your hand. He's just like, oh yeah, they want a bitch. Easy, bar the gates. They'll see the kind of they'll see how mean we can be, right? It can be even meaner. Aegon, I don't. Aegon obviously cares a lot about being liked. Aemon, I do think the way they've portrayed Aemon in this series, I do think he actually does care about being liked, but he'd never admit it to anyone. He'd literally like cut your throat before he told you he cared if you thought poorly of him, right? Yeah, I don't know what Aegon, but right, we can see Aegon be very impulsive, and he can react to like resort to more violence without the consequences, or more defaulting to others to act violently, right? Through them, not himself. So, but yeah, I think we just kind of see with Aemond how black and white and kind of how, he's very authoritarian. As where Aegon, you kind of got more like the pampered prince trying to prove he's a big boy and stomping his feet and saying, I said, screaming stuff like I said, take his head off, stuff like that. We don't see that with Aemond as much, right? Aemond's able to take the reins more. He does command more of a presence. But yeah, there's not a lot of empathy there. I do think a lot of the fault, and maybe not a lot of the fault in both of them. I mean, would Allison be able to get through to Aemon? No, probably not. But we don't ever see we see no attempt to build relationships with their sons at this point and to talk to them, right? To me, I just I think that's a pretty huge fault we see from Otto to her, to her, to her son, right? It trickles down where we just don't really, at this point, we don't see an attempt to like kind of reform these relationships.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest plus to keeping everyone in the city is the hope that they don't just get bum rushed by the remaining dragons trying to take the city, that Rhaenyra and Team Black would be hesitant to I guess do what Daenerys did in Game of Thrones, where he was like, I'm just gonna burn everything and like whatever happens. That's the only real thing I can think of, like why you'd want to keep the small folk, is like a buffer between Rhaenyra and you, especially where he now, that's their, I mean, Dreamfire existed in one scene flying over to Driftmark in season 1, but we haven't seen Helena fly Dreamfire since. I don't get the sense that they're setting Helena up as a dragon rider, so I think it's really just Aemon's the only one with a Vhagar, great dragon, very tough, very big, but like 3-on-1, or however it may be, could be 4-on-1, could be too much for Vhagar, and then what?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I guess Ben, do you want to talk about what the mother of the year, the parenting style of Allison, before we move on to another part of Westeros?
I just think that, like, is Allison a good mother? No, of course not. She's not a good mother. But like,
what?
Whoa! Whoa! All right, that was no.
Yeah, no, she's a horrible mother. Forced into a bad situation. It's bad all around. Generational trauma. But yeah,
I just think we see a real inability to like connect with her children is what I mean, which I guess is pretty bad, right? I guess like, because what I'm thinking, like, I just never jump to call someone a bad parent unless they're I guess just out of practice outside of TV shows, which is really relevant. Like, unless someone is right blatantly how do I say it? caught like blatantly causing harm or neglecting to like a serious degree. As for Allison Carey, like, you know, she clearly she cared. At this point, it's a little different, but yeah, I just don't think she really has an ability to connect with them. And at this point, she just kind of lashes out her own emotional frustrations on them that, you know, when really her kids need comfort even more than she does, right? I think they're left much more weak than she is. And, you know, we've already seen the consequences of that. Like, you know, Helena's pretty much just wandering, lost. Aegon obviously literally almost got himself killed. And she doesn't even try to talk to Aemond at this point, right? There's like no connection there. And she just is like, oh, he's a monster. So, yeah.
You were saying, Ben, though, about how you feel. I feel like I accidentally derailed you. I tried to
I
make
think I cut out for a second too, and like my internet like lagged for like a few seconds, anyways. Not big deal. You guys kept the flow going. I think like for me, Allison like was kind of trained by Otto to see her children as like chess pieces, and like never really. Yeah, I agree to a degree with Ryan said that she never really like connected with them on like a deep emotional level. But I do think she like at least put in like a marginal effort to try to point them in the right direction. But without any kind of like emotional like
Exactly.
foundation there, like that's just not. I think she again she has a very similar issue with as with Otto, where he's very like calculated and he kind of knows like the right which chess pieces to move in the right direction, but he's not like good enough to understand how to like emotionally manipulate the chess pieces to move the way they're supposed to move and not like go completely off the board.
Yeah, and I think we saw, like, for instance, in the last episode, we saw a little more malice from Allison, where, like, with Aegon, I believe she was probably trying to cut him down a little there, right? Where I think Otto would have said roughly the same thing, but he would have, and it would have been, probably came off it even more arrogant, but I don't think it would have been, like, as degrading in that way. He would have found a way to kind of reframe it in, like, more of a rebuking than, like, a, degradation, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough out there for this family. I feel like, but I want to quickly go to the Eerie, which has gotten its third redesign in as many appearances. Personally, the worst design that they've had, in my opinion, of the Eerie. It misses out on the castle with the moon door opening. This one's just like a castle at the end of like a mountain peak, whereas the original versions of the Eerie really felt like a fantasy castle versus like a castle that could exist, but which is my preference, is like the fantasy elements. Maybe the showrunners want more of a ground, but there are dragons, so I don't know. But Lady Erin, I gotta imagine this is Rhaenyra's aunt, right? Not terribly impressed with the two small dragons and having to babysit for Rhaenyra. I don't know, Ben. What were your thoughts of this scene? Because she was pretty mean to Rhaenyra, right? Like that was uncalled for.
It felt almost like a comedy scene, like splattered in the middle of like a heavy drama. It was very interesting because I was like, I mean, we brought you dragons. Technically, we brought you two. You only asked for one.
Yeah, no, it was like we got eggs. Also, those could be dragons. You could have 6 dragons here for all you know.
Yeah.
very unappreciative. Ryan, how'd you feel about it?
I do think it was kind of like they quickly, like, she like totally tore her apart at first, obviously, but from at least referring to the books, bro, if you can confirm, I do remember that Erin, it does kind of sound like how she would have been likely to respond. It seemed to be her take on it, right? Wanting that protection. I know that she hadn't married. There were rumors. There were just like crazy sexualized rumors, right? About her, both ways, men and women. But then after this happened, she kind of flips and is like, it's like she gets all like cutthroat and gets into the political nuances and just cuts her apart. And then she's like, kind of remembers like, oh, this is a kid. And then she's like, oh, so this is your room, sweetie. I'll see you soon. She like really quickly turned to the point where I was like, are they playing on the, it was weird. Like, do you remember there was the rumor that, I think there's like one rumor that maybe it's the wrong character, that she like is either a virgin or like, and then there's one like sleeping with a bunch of men. Then there's one that she actually prefers the company of women, and that's why she doesn't marry. Do you remember this, Brian?
Yeah, sounds right. I'm sure the one with like a company of a bunch of men was probably Mushroom's contribution to the legends, given
and maybe
what
and maybe the company of women, but who knows? But right, because that I think it was more just like nurturing, but because of that, I thought about like, she got kind of like, oh, but also you kind of cute though.
Yeah, she's negging her.
Yeah.
Well, she got pretty sweet at the end, but yeah, I think it just kind of showed that obviously Sadie isn't thrilled. Poor second son of Damon and his Valyrian gal. She just is clearly just constantly a disappointment, it seems.
Yeah,
it was kind of
Joffrey and then Aegon and Viserys, right? And they're really young at this point, so like, really, I don't know. You only send one person to help watch all these kids. Come on.
And it is pretty much. I mean, it's literally like, is she really going to watch them, or is it more like you're going to have? I mean, it's going to be like handmaidens and servants and stuff, and she's going to sit with them at dinner. I mean, she literally has her own room. They just showed it, so clearly who's watching them right now. And yeah, the dragons are very small. It's kind of the idea like, oh, they're going to grow, but isn't it the idea like, no, I want protection during wartime?
Yeah, right. I want protection right now.
It's happening now, Yeah. I don't have time to wait.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, but
yeah. All right, so from there, let's go to Harrenhal. The spooky side story of Damon renovating Harrenhal, having a horrible time because of Alice Rivers, and also putting his trust in perhaps the wrong person, I guess. And that's the biggest part of this thing. Yes, the flashy thing is Alice Rivers made Damon have a sex dream about his mother. We saw it. None of us are super comfortable with it. None of us love that, but it happened.
There were some interesting things. It was kind of interesting. They decided to tap into the mother issues, and then he brings up Aemond, and he says to Alice, he's like, hopefully you never run into him. And as we know, as they've kind of implied in this show, Aemond probably has some mother issues for sure. And then she's like, it was the same as you. So just anyone who's read the books, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. It's kind of foreshadowing. I kind of thought it was, we know there's kind of it's fair to say a connection between Aemond and Damon. Like, there's similar styles of characters for sure to a degree. And then we see this,
Yeah. But, I think the big actually important part is, he trusted Willem Blackwood to handle business, and instead he waged war under Rhaenyra's banners and did a bunch of fucked up shit.
Yeah. I feel like when Damon is like, he's like, hey man, can you kind of see how to get under their skin. He's like, oh yeah, I can do a bunch of really fucked
Yeah.
up stuff. I can commit a lot of war crimes. All right, I want you to
And
tell me
went back, he's like, yeah, no, Damon said we could do it. It's cool.
Yeah, and then it is kind of funny because it's like, right, it's almost like accepted. It's like, all right, we got to do this. And then the other river lords, they just come back. They're like, whoa, I mean, we're down for some stuff. That was way too, that was way too far. That would dude Willem.
Yeah. What do you think, man? What do you think of Willem Blackwood just doing horrible shit in the Riverland?
I mean, this is
Putting
not
the
the first,
mountain to shame.
this is not the first time that Damon has sent some dumb fuck to do a job and explicitly told him how to do it, and then he does it in the opposite way.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't even say he does it the opposite way. He just kind of says like, right,
Well-
we know how Damon kind of is, and well, how he projects, right? Think about how he talked to Tully last season, right? And how he comes off to people overall, and then he carries the favor of Blackwood, who's obviously fiery, and he's like, all right, go do this. But then, right, he obviously doesn't mean do that, but
Well, he also specifically says to Willem Blackwood to do it not under Rhaenyra's banner, so that they have like, you know, some kind of
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, plausible deniability, and then he does the opposite.
Yeah.
And that's the
I
most
mean,
important part. Like, obviously, the war crimes are bad.
well,
but,
does
you know.
it say under? Do the River Lords say that he did it under their banner? Because I'm kind of
Yeah.
wondering.
yeah.
I was
That
honestly
they were raising the green dragon banner. Yes,
That's what I remember. Because I was just kind of wait, the green? Because they're the
No,
black.
you said
Oh,
the,
the black,
they
the
said the
black.
black and red.
No,
Yeah.
no,
black
yeah,
and red,
yeah.
sorry.
I was
Black
just
and
be I was just surprised because I feel like they would know it.
Oh, your mic went out.
Yep.
But yeah, I think, you know, it's fucked up. Can't get any good help. I think you're back now, Ryan.
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say I feel like they would know it was the Blackwoods or who was operating, but yeah, that makes sense. He kind of screwed him over.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
think
I
it's
mean,
a
Damon
plausible
was
deniability
like-
still like.
Yeah. Damon the first time was like, okay, you know, I'm not gonna say what to do, but like you guys, you get the vibe we're going for with Blood and Cheese, and Blood and Cheese like, oh, we get you, Damon. And then
Yeah.
it backfired horribly. So this time he's like, all right, I'm gonna be very direct with you. Do not do this. And then he just still did it. So you know, he can't catch a break here.
Well, yeah, I think from Blackwood's perspective, maybe remember he's like, why do you want these Brackens? And he's like, well, because right, they literally refuse me to the point of death. Those are the kind of men I need. So Blackwood sees like, oh, so he appreciates these extremes. Also, I just did think of this. There's that, and the Blackwoods hate the Brackens. Like the fact that he wants to bring them onto his side, he might have done that on purpose.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Nice.
Dude,
He was a little bit like, I think it was a little bit like Damon didn't fully appreciate the animosity and historic, like, you know, when he was like, yeah, you know, do what you got to do to like bring them to heel. And Blackwood's like, got it, carte blanche to commit war crimes. Awesome.
yeah.
So yeah, not great. But I will say Alice Rivers continues to be a delightful character, in my opinion. I'm always very happy to see her in the scene when she was talking to Damon in the hallway, and then was it Simon Strong came, and she just disappears behind him, and you don't see her like walk on front. Just so good. Little stuff like that is I love it. You know, just such a fun character.
She's very like, it's just so like what is it, like Morgan Le Fay from like King Arthur, like that kind of character archetype. It's ridiculous.
I love it. A big fan.
I like when, you know, Damon's like, oh, so you got a raven with this information. She's like, no, I saw a vision.
Yeah. Came to me in a dream.
That came to me in a dream. It's like, Jesus Christ.
David just has to be exasperated at this point dealing with her. Okay, cool, great. But you know, that is part of the fun of Game of Thrones, is seeing otherwise grounded characters have to interact with just the weirdest people that have ever existed. Like that, you know,
Yeah,
Davos interacting with Melisandre, that was always very fun as well.
true.
So it's just good stuff there. All right, so we covered Harrenhal. Let's go to Jace. Jace getting shit done this whole season. He got the Starks on their side, but it's very slow. We're not on season 7, 8 Game of Thrones rules where you can get people from one side of Westeros to the other in an episode. It's gonna be a while for the Starks to be involved, but the one negative thing about this that I'll say is like I don't love always portraying the Freys as like weird little freaks. I think Walder Frey, yes, was a weird little freak, but it doesn't mean every Frey that ever existed is. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. I think your mic went out again.
They're Weasley. They're a bunch of Weasley little freaks. All right, it's okay. No,
well, it goes back to what we talked about last week, Ryan, where they're like, oh, because Catelyn's brother was like, kind of a pussy, like all Tullys are kind of like that way. It's like, no, like why do we have to pigeonhole these?
Yeah, that one is kind of ridiculous because it's kind of based on a false notion. However,
right, not even the book version of him.
But the phrase, I do believe the phrase, right? Aren't they a family that has like a long record of they're always kind of grasping for the net for a little more than they have, right? They also use the crossing to their advantage. And I do think Walder Frey is said to literally look like a weasel, and that is genetic.
Yeah, but look,
and that is like a genetic. So I think that all kind of fits what a Frey would be.
From the Freys got themselves out of the dirt. Same way the Lannisters did, all right? The Lannisters got their gold by lying and getting in there. The Freys got their from building a bridge.
But the Lannisters all happen to be, but the Lannisters are tall, good-looking.
Yeah, they're hot. That's the problem.
So that's the thing, right? It does say in the books that, right? Every Frey is described as looking like a weasel, and a lot of them are balding. I do. Am I correct on that? I believe even I remember. What is it like? You remember the drunk Frey that basically he gets captured by the Brotherhood.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are bald. So it
makes sense to me that crippled too.
He's a sad dude.
And like a drunk.
Yeah, like a legit. But no, so they kind of made sense to me. I was like, oh, he does look like he's a more portly Frey, and I didn't think he was especially. Nothing compared to Walder Frey.
Nothing compared to Walder.
He was exactly. I think it made sense that it was like, oh yeah, this is a Frey. He's gonna see what he can get out of it.
As he should too. In fairness. Well, I don't know, Ben. What'd you think of the Freys in this episode?
I mean, they're kind of just doing what everybody who's kind of a neutral party in this is doing, which is trying to leverage everything they have to try to get a dragon for protection.
Right. Yeah, very true and very fair too.
Yeah. They're also like, yeah, we also want it's like, okay, all right. I guess we're doing this.
Yeah. Listen, that place piece of shit, obviously, but my stepdad's actually renovating it, so this is an even better deal than you thought. There's a witch that lives there. It's great.
Yeah, you get a free psychic witch.
Yeah, you can have it. We insist you keep her. Actually, if things.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it was I guess cool to see Jace kind of wheeling and dealing and trying to portray strength for the crown from his mother's side. I do wonder because I thought that Rhaenyra was going to be more upset.
Right.
She seemed to kind of be fake upset and then get over it really quickly.
Which I mean,
Yeah, he did a good job, so which is probably a big reason why. Like, if that turned out badly, then like he probably would have been more upset. But yeah,
Yeah, she's just trying to continuously shelter him, but every time he gets an opportunity, he's just like murdering it. I mean, he's definitely he's very diplomatic, right? We're seeing in him, we're seeing in him exactly what we do not see in Aegon and Aemond. Like I think because compares it, sometimes you're like, oh man, Jason's like a real like he's a little soft. It feels like he feels almost like a puppy. And like human lord form, but like I think he's literally everything those two aren't, and that's why his diplomacy is working. So I think Rhaenyra is just kind of like knows. I think she was as honest with him as she could be, as like, I can't go out there. So basically, I don't think he saw that it's like, no, I don't think you're weak. It's just I don't want to be alone in this,
she's still traumatized from Luke dying.
Mm-hmm.
That too is it was a pretty messed up way of doing it. And she did send all three of them out,
Yeah.
But that leads us, I guess, to the ending, right? Which is like they're gonna obviously try to get some new dragon riders, right? People with Targaryen blood. I feel like there's been some hints throughout the season. It could for sure be very interesting, right?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously we all know we've read the book, so this is hard to talk about without spoilers. So if you are listening and you're not a book reader and you don't want to be spoiled, thank you so much for listening. We're going to spoil a little bit about this particular plot.
Are we?
So,
okay.
Well, just because it's hard to talk, like it'd be very disingenuous, and I'm going to spoil it here. It'd be very disingenuous for me to be like, I wonder if you is going to ride a dragon. I wonder if that's why he's been in it. It's like I'm not making this connection because I'm good at reading between the lines. Like I know that he rides a dragon.
Also, why? And I don't mean to swear. I'll swear once here. Why the fuck would Hugh be in this if it wasn't to ride a dragon? What? I mean, let's be honest. Like I do. Like this portrayal is especially boring. I don't know why. Just like at the beginning when they showed him and he's just like, it's just me. Like it's not it makes sense. It got the message across, but like the pause in that, I was like, it's probably one of the weaker scenes.
Yeah, and like I get like, okay, he's a part of the small folk. We want to portray him as the eyes through it, but also this isn't what this particular show or Game of Thrones is about. Like Gendry was also a small folk, but he was going to become, the Lord of Storm's End.
Well, it's not even that, right? You can have some of the small folk and stuff. It just needs to be needs to feel more relevant to the plot. I feel like they kind of forced it in,
or through the eyes.
Oh, I'm building some. Just this random guy is building some stuff, and he has blonde hair. Gendry made sense because like Robert was they were actively pursuing Gendry because he looked exactly like Robert, right? And they knew he was his bastard, and then he runs away with Arya. But
yeah, he's a small folk, but actually secretly the son of the king.
Well, and Hugh might be. I mean, Hugh obviously they showed his blonde hair for a reason. I actually think in the books, I think he's the only one of the new Dragon Riders who doesn't have definite connected lineage, or at least like supposed. Like I don't think they're ever able to say who he's related to. Right, and I do think he is like a commoner because I do think they were looking for more like bastards, or like I don't think they have a direct connection for him. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of like, hey, we know that throughout history, our the men in our family just be slinging that around all the time. If you think,
for sure, if
you're related to it,
come
and try to mount a dragon, you might die. You're probably gonna die.
But I'm saying, for instance, it's like pretty obvious, even if that Adam and Alan are related to Corlys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
The other guy and that other guy that we saw earlier in the season, he claims that he's Viserys' brother, right? And Daemon's brother. I don't think this guy claims anything or has any connection. And in the books, from what I remember, it was more just like Yeah, it was the same. It was the same kind of situation, I believe, where it was like he was just kind of like a random commoner, but he had
Yeah.
some
The
traits of a
one
Targaryen.
the one we saw before was Ulf, right? That was
Ulf, yep, Ulf the
yeah,
White, yeah.
yeah. So
I kind of
yeah,
forget his storyline. I feel like there's something there.
him and you are together. I guess we saw you know, for real. If you're still listening now and you don't want the spoiler, please, you know, go. You know, him and you are the two betrayers of Rhaenyra, who flip over to the Greens during this storyline. You know, fucking.
Well, except both of them are already going to be they're already both Greens anyways. Probably.
Well, yeah, I mean, who knows when I think they're both just kind of like power hungry. Like, you know, at one point, Yu's like, oh, I'm fucking riding Verminthor. I'm going to be the fucking king, which is, you know, insane for him to hit, which I will be very interested. His family's going to die, right? Like, horribly. And that's what's going to be his, like, turning point to betray Rhaenyra. Like, why are we building up the family that he didn't have in the book if they're not going to die horribly and lead to him betraying Rhaenyra? You know,
that's a good point. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of context other than just being a really strong blacksmith. So
yeah, right. He's cool, but he gets carried away. And then Ulf, I assume his boys are gonna die, and that's gonna be pretty tragic for him. They do seem like great hags, honestly. So be pretty devastating. Oh man, but yeah, I thought this was a good episode. I mean, I've loved this show this season. I wish it was 10 episodes. I don't know why they were like, oh, we're only gonna give our most popular show 8 episodes.
It does kind of suck, but are they ending? Are they going more seasons after this, or are they ending it here?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be probably 2 more
seasons.
Yeah, I just wasn't thinking because I was like, well, it is a small part, right, in a book. Like, but yeah, it'd be pretty tough to end it in 3 episodes from here. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we're on episode 5. I feel like usually it flies by as where it's been pretty nice. Like I was like, all right, I don't feel like this is going too fast, you know. Can enjoy this while it's here.
Yeah. It's just weird for me. I mean, like I know Warner Brothers Discovery is broke and David Zaslav keeps like canceling everything, but like you would think, you know, the numbers they get for this show are so good and so strong. You'd think that this would be the show that they're like willing to give 10 episodes to. But you know, maybe in the future they will do that. I'm sure it's an incredibly expensive show to make.
To be fair, the episodes have been pretty long. I'd have to run through all of them, but there's been multiple that are well over an hour. I think the first, and I'm sure the finale is going to be like
quite long. Yeah. You know, it is what it is. But I guess we're also going to get the Hedge Knight that started filming, so we'll get that. Yeah, I think like the biggest disappointment is like I know that in 4 weeks when this is over, we're not going to see another episode for 2 years, and like that sucks so much. Whereas like Game of Thrones, really one of the last like premiere shows that actually came out every year. They don't really do that anymore with shows like this.
No, when is the Rings of just can I take a left turn for 1 sec? Rings of Power. I guess
that's soon, right? That's coming back out soon.
Yeah, because
the first season also came out around the same time.
No, yeah.
House of the Dragon season 1.
It was the exact same time, roughly. Because I remember I would watch them both like once.
Yeah, Rings of Power. Hey, maybe we'll do a Rings of Power podcast if you guys want.
Dude, I would definitely do a Rings of Power podcast. I'll have to do
you in Rings of Power podcast. I don't know if you even watched Rings of Power.
I haven't. No. I could possibly catch up about it.
It's August 29th. There's time.
I feel like we're also too. I just thought of that because
Wait, what was that?
I feel like we could get Alex for that one too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I was thinking Alex as well would make sense.
He'll put us to shame, honestly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about the Lord of the Rings universe in any way.
I
feel like I know about this universe. So
I know this one a lot better. I've read the Silmarillion twice at this point, but a Lord of the Rings lore is really fucking hard, to be honest. Like, it's really complicated. Like, there's just a lot to it. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd be down to do that for sure. I need to finish the first season of Rings of Power to do this.
Oh, really? Pretty good. It's a pretty
fell
good
off of it, and then I never went back to it. But it was pretty good from the first 2 episodes I saw.
I'd say
the Hobbit part, I was a little like, we can get through these scenes.
Yeah, it got it was a cool ending.
Was it? That's good. All right. Well, Ryan, anything you want to promote before we get out of here?
Not that I can think of, Brian. No.
All right, Ben. I mean, you have stuff. We got the Have Not room. Floor's yours.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited to finally come back on and talk about this in season 1. Get me on to talk about an episode. So I'm here. It's a good time to get on because we're rolling back into the Big Brother season to promote that. Yeah, next 2 nights, 2-night premiere for that. BB26. We'll see how it goes. I try not to get my hopes up and really hype up a Big Brother season these days, just because the majority of them are kind of mediocre at best. But we occasionally get a good season, so hopefully it's this season.
Yeah, hopefully. Where can they follow you on Twitter for your hot takes?
You can follow me on Twitter at Ben Sharon. I mean, I'll probably tweet about Big Brother, but I've definitely used Twitter less, in the last year or so. So we'll see. Especially with the way the feeds are working now, with no flashback.
Literally devastating.
Twitter more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was the Rhaenys and Maylis getting killed of the Big Brother off season was finding out there's not going to be flashbacks for live feeds. Going to be really cool when people are just saying shit happened and there's no way to confirm it on the live feeds. It'll be very fun.
Yeah, I'm just hoping. I'm hoping for a person. I'm sure there's going to be somebody who just hard records everything and streams it to a server or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't condone such a thing, but I'm sure someone would do that. Yeah, right.
Well, I condone any, I condone any reaping of what anybody sows, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about Allison reaping what she sowed. CBS and Paramount are reaping what they sow by making their feeds harder to watch. They're just encouraging piracy.
The one thing we don't tolerate is Sir Kristen Cole reaping what he sows. We will assault another officer for staining his cloak over that one.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah. So yeah, I think please subscribe to this show, obviously, but also the channel and the Have Not Room. Check that out if you're a Big Brother fan. And if you're not a fan, start watching and listen to us talk about it. Should be a lot of fun. You can follow me on Twitter at the fake BMAR. That's BMARR. I'll be occasionally annoying about Big Brother this year, I'm sure, on there. As it unfolds. But other than that, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all in the next one.